Good afternoon, my name is Cesar Yok. I am the founder of the Bronze Institute for Urban Systems. Today is April 18, 2020. It's on a Saturday, and I'm going to do a presentation about the first element of systems planning. So the first element is in systems planning, an urban space is a human-dominated ecosystem. This is the table of contents. I'm going to go a little bit with the glossary, some of the terms that are being used throughout this presentation, an ecosystem diagram, plate tectonics, geology in New York City, biomes, human ecology, culture and society, zoning and architecture, energy and waste, deforestation, mineral extraction for electric vehicles or e-bikes, and climate change. So some of it is going to be in cities, and then some of the context is going to be a global context. So how humans are dominating world ecosystems. Glossary. Ecology is a branch of biology concerning interactions among organisms in their biophysical environment, which includes both biotic and abiotic components. Abiotic is non-living factors, which is wind, water, rocks, storms, etc. Biotic is living factors, animals, plants, and organisms. A biophysical environment is a biotic and abiotic surrounding of an organism or population. It consequently includes the factors that have an influence in their survival, development, and evolution. Biophysical environment can vary in scale from microscopic to global in extent. So in ecology, I'm going to talk about it in the context of humans. In this ecology, its definition tended to be with species like birds and other animals and how they interacted with their natural environment. But in a human-dominated ecosystem, the human is the dominant species in that setting. Glossary. An ecosystem is a community of living organisms in conjunction with the non-living components of the environment interacting as a system. These biotic and abiotic components are linked together through nutrient cycles and energy flows. So nutrient cycles and energy flows. Human dominated. What does that mean? The human species is the dominant species in that environment, or that species that dictates what happens in that system. And here you have pictures of human-dominated ecosystems. You play a role in what happens in that system. And here there's a lot of energy involved in this. In the top picture to your left, you see people congregating in a building. Somebody giving a speech. In the other picture, you see people working together in a garden, and then you have picture of New York City with its bridges and its buildings. So we are the dominant species in that system. We dictate what happens in that system. We play a large role in there. A bio is a community of plants and animals that have common characteristics for the environment they exist in. They can be found over a range of continents. Biomes are distinct biological communities that form in response to a shared physical environment. I'm going to show a picture later on of biomes in the world. Everything in nature in every way has to do with energy and systems. You get energy from the sun, and then through photosynthesis, that tree gives up oxygen and also takes in CO2, carbon dioxide. The photosynthesis breaks down carbon dioxide, and the tree releases oxygen. But in this case, it also releases heat. So plants, you have the plants, and then you have the decomposers. The decomposers release heat. The carnivores create a decomposer. A herbivore creates a decomposer. A carnivore eats a herbivore, and then a herbivore eats plants. For all through the process, the heat loss. That is because of the laws of thermodynamics. And the first law has to do with energy conservation. And energy is not lost and not destroyed. It just kept intact nothing is lost. Well, the second law says that there is a transformation issue or a quality issue to the process. So in this is an example of it. So through the process of eating another animal, a heat is lost and the quality of the energy is degraded over time. So plants tend to have the most energy, but through the process, the last person that eats, they said the herbivore gets the less energy because heat is lost through each step of the process. The energy flows in as sunlight and out as heat. The planet is made of plates. These are called the plate tectonics. And here are all the plates throughout the world. And these plates move. And later on I'm going to show how they move. This is close to New York State. You notice that New York State is not near a plate boundary. This is the reason why New York State hasn't had a lot of earthquakes, because it's not near a plate boundary. But we do feel the effects of an earthquake thousands of miles away, but very small. And you go to Central Park, in the tunnels, there you will see some of the rocks. We have cracks in the rocks because those cracks are formed from seismic waves from other areas that had earthquakes. But here we don't have that many earthquakes. This is the types of boundaries. You have a convergent plate boundary, transform plate boundary, divergent plate boundary, convergent again, a continental drift zone, and here are the different types of plate boundaries in the dynamics of it. So you have a transform plate boundary. So maybe we have the analogy I will use is my hands. So I'm gonna put my hands together, and then I'm gonna put my hand to my right up, the other one down, up, down, up, down, up, down. That's a transform plate boundary. That's what happens. An example of it is a Sandra's fault. It starts breaking apart when the plates go up and down, in this case. But it is flat on the surface, so it doesn't really go up. That's just an example of how it works. It just starts breaking apart when one of the plates goes up, the other one goes down, the other one goes up, the other one goes down. It starts breaking the plate. And then you have the diverging. That is when you have two plates splitting apart. That's a divergent plate boundary. So you have two plates. Maybe you have a piece of paper and you're pulling it from the side, and then slowly it starts ripping from the bottom. That's an analogy for a divergent plate boundary. They have a convergent plate boundary. We have two boundaries coming together, and then they hit each other. Whoever has the most force dictates which one is going to go down and which one is going to go up. In this case, the continental plate has more strength than the oceanic plate, so that means the oceanic plate is going to go down. And equally, it needs a subduction plate. The subduction plate. You can see in the diagram the subduction plate. That means the force of the continental is greater than the force of the oceanic plate. So the continental stays more intact because it has probably more mass through the continent. So in that the other one doesn't have much force in order to be able to move it. So the plate goes down in the subducting plate. But sometimes the oceanic plate has more impact on the continental plate, and then it starts creating mountains. The geology in New York City. And New York City, it has large deposits of different types of rocks. Here you notice that you have these different types of formations in the barrows, and the bedrock is is able to maintain a lot of this weight for these buildings. This is the reason why New York City is able to have tall buildings, because of the bedrock. The bedrock is able to withstand a lot of this weight. And then they have biomes. So again, a biome is a community of plants and animals that have common characteristics for the environment they exist in. They can be found over a range of continents. Biomes are distinct biological communities that have formed in a response to a shared physical climate. So in mainly a lot of areas in the north, east, and west section of New York State and the United States is boreal forest. A lot of the tropical forests tend to be in South America and Africa, and also Asia. You have a large section of tropical forests. Tropical forests are important for the oxygen that we take in throughout the planet. If we destroy the forest, we also destroy our oxygen intake. Human ecology. Human ecology has to do with how humans interact with the natural environment, how we play a role in what happens in nature and what happens to things. Then here you have nature. So we do something to nature, and then we could destroy in a way that we create deforestation, and then we also create desertification, where there's no more water there, and we can't plant anything there anymore in order to construct our cities. This is what happens in major cities. You have culture and society. You have people congregating in parks, or we go to places to watch concerts, music. We also have events in which people are being creative and expressing themselves. You have culture and society again. People play a dominant force in what happens to nature through our culture. You know, how we perceive our environment, what we do with our environment, and how we express ourselves in the environment. And here we have pictures of people coming together to improve a garden. And you have an image of a painting and one of the gardeners and her expressing herself. And then in cities and human-dominated ecosystems, politics plays a role in what happens with a lot of the systems. And here we have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders coming to a restaurant and talking about their policies, and also other members of the community coming there and engaging in this ritual, this political ritual. And we also express our culture through events. And the last picture, you have a Native American expressing herself and then talking about the history of Native Americans. And you have all the folks interacting with the past and the future and the present as well, in expressing themselves and seeing themselves in their environment, where we are the dominant species in those environments. We decide what happens with a lot of these environments. We play a major role in it. And environmental psychology. Environmental psychology is all about the interplay between people and their environment. As a field, it seeks to understand how and why our environment impact us, how we can leverage that knowledge to our advantage, and what we can do to improve our relationship with the world around us. So you have these two pictures here, right? How does it make you feel? This has a psychological effect on people. The first picture was in an industrial site. The one on the top, it was an industrial site. So only the industries care about the industries, but they didn't care about the surrounding. This is what is showing through these pictures. You know, when you have all these waste on the floor, it's a psychological effect on how people perceive the place. Here is a sense of fear walking around this area because it's not being taken care of, because there are no trees there, there are no plants there. That has a psychological effect on how people see themselves in that environment, and also how they take care of it. The one to your right is the needles. This is close to where I live. I'm walking around and I just took a picture of this, and then you have all these needles of people using drugs, and they just left it in the street. They just put it there. What is the psychological effect on people? It doesn't say safety, right? And also, why is this happening to those folks? Why do they need to use drugs, right? This is environmental psychology. The way we perceive our environment, the way we see ourselves in the environment plays a role in how we deal with it, how we take care of it. That's environmental psychology, the psychology of the environment. In human-dominated ecosystem, we are the major players in design and how we use natural resources. And here is zoning and architecture. So we develop these tools and these ideas of how to use nature for our own use, and we use architecture. In New York City, we use zoning to create all these boundaries, to create all this fragmentation in nature. Nature has a hard problem persisting with fragmenting, right? So the only way to maintain these systems is by putting a lot of energy on it, because nature is not able to withstand these things. It's humans have to put in an energy through fossil fuels in order to create this type of systems, in order to create this type of realities. Fossil fuels is what started this, and it started an industrial revolution. But it's a new age right now, so we have to think beyond fossil fuels. And what those fossil fuels produce? You have waste, right? In the laws of thermodynamics today, the second law is this entropy. Everything leads toward this order. So when you consume and you produce all this energy, you're gonna have waste produced. This is an example in New York City. We have all this trash on the floor because everything produces waste, because the laws of thermodynamics. Everything leads toward disorder. You need a large amount of energy in order to maintain the systems. We were able to do all this because of the fossil fuel era, but that is almost coming to an end. So we need to think beyond this thing. We need to think in a sustainable way. And right now, I'm going to go to the global context and how human-dominated ecosystems interact with other nations. In this case, for example, New York City, there is more introduction of e-bikes. E-bicycles use cobalt in order to run these bicycles. And where does the mineral come from? I will talk about this since later on. The first thing is deforestation and forests. This is a change in global forest cover between 2000 and 2012. You notice all these dark areas? Those dark areas mean that there are no forests there. And then the dark red areas, that means there is deforestation. Those areas are being either deserted or being destroyed. Deforestation is happening. It's the soil depletion that is destroying these forests. So in a human-dominated ecosystem, where the humans are the dominant species, they are the ones that dictate or are dictating what's happening with all these ecosystems throughout the planet. And this is what it shows, how we are impacting all these ecosystems around the planet. Here is a picture of the Amazon rainforest, the deforestation, all these fires in the Amazon rainforest that is killing off all these trees. And you need trees for oxygen and also to reduce the CO2 concentration, because remember, through photosynthesis, plants taking carbon dioxide and they produce oxygen. So we need all these forests to be protected in order to protect ourselves. Here is a map of the cobalt distribution or the export. Number one, export of cobalt artisanal mines to China for processing. Over half of the world's cobalt comes from the DRC, which is the Democratic Republic of the Congo. 20% of which is from artisanal mines. So over 50% of the cobalt comes from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Okay? And then you have the supply of processed cobalt to factories in Asia, make rechargeable batteries, supply of batteries to global car companies, right? So here this diagram shows you that the Congo gets little of it, but other nations get a lot in return. A lot of these residents in the Congo get minimal pay or hardly any pay in order for these things to be extracted for their own countries. They are exploited, right? So we play a large role in what happens in these countries because we are so connected in the world. So here, the processing happens in China, Japan, and then Europe gets all these batteries, computers, electric vehicles, e-bicycles. So that's the reason why I inject e-bikes in some electric vehicles, because we need to protect the Democratic Republic of the Congo for them to have better lives and not to exploit them to extract all the resources for ourselves. We get the result of it. This is how rich our country is. They're processed through other regions, and then we get the results of all these minerals, which is consumer brand. This is how we are so connected throughout the world, and especially in New York City. So our decisions, how we perceive our world, and what we do in our own communities plays an impact on what happens to other communities in other continents. Here's a diagram of mine production of cobalt in DR Congo from 2018 to 2019. In 2019, there was 100,000 metric tons of cobalt being exported or being extracted from these places. And in nature, it's not finite. These things don't last forever or are extracted forever. It's always a slowdown of extraction. There's less of it over time. So this is the reasons why we have to think very clearly what we want and how we see things. Our cultures, our society, our environments, the psychology of places. Because we are a global transportation system. We can interact with any person throughout the world through our systems, through our global transportation system. It could either be through phones or airplanes. We could go anywhere in the world. That's how globalized we are in this planet. And why is that causing? Climate change. Some people do not believe in climate change. Well, I sure believe it because I've seen it since 1998 of the destructions we have in ecosystems, on biodiversity, on all these ecosystems, on all the deforestation or this desertification, all this land being overproduced, and then the soil depletion. There's not enough soil in order to replenish that area, and then it's causing desertification. Do we have a choice to make? What is it that we do next? It's the reason why I created this elements of system planning. It gives a sense of hope by working together, and also changing the fossil fuel paradigm. There's a difference now. The fossil fuel era is over. And through peak oil and other examples I will show in all the videos, we don't have the same amount of fossil fuels we did in the past. Even if we had those same amounts, it's still not useful to use fossil fuels because we are extracting from nature. So we have to think deeply about this about solutions, and some of it is painstakingly hard because fossil fuels are everywhere. Even right now, I had to use my phone and I'm using the laptop to make this video. And these are fossil fuel based equipment. I understand that. So it is a difficult task. It's understandable, but we have to change this paradigm because the industrial revolution is over. And I hope we could work together in order to find solutions to these things. And hopefully these elements start propelling people to think about how connected we are with other people throughout the planet. Thank you. Have a good remaining weekend. Thank you. Bye.